African Americans must be removed from the United States.
Welcome back to my channel, brothers and sisters. So there I am scrolling on my FYP, haven't shared my TikTok in a minute. And of course, I hear stories of my brothers and sisters' experiences over there in the United States. And wanted to share this particular clip. Let's get into it.
African Americans must be removed from the United States. That's the only way the country can survive.
Mm.
Let's talk about this for a second. This is
Mm-hmm.
Thomas Jefferson, and he was a person who once existed. Indeed, of all of the founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson was definitely one of them. Now, it is often said that Thomas Jefferson was a complicated man when it came to slavery. And the truth is, his thoughts on slavery and black folk in this country are very jarring and are kind of all over the place. We have the fact that in an early draft of the Declaration of Independence, he did explicitly call slavery an affront to nature, and he criticized King George for engaging in the transatlantic slave trade. He called out slavery by name as something that was evil, but eventually had to remove it from future drafts so he wouldn't upset certain people. And in different writings, in different letters to different people, Jefferson explicitly talks about how horrible slavery is and how the U.S. should really do something about it. And yet, of course, as we all know, that did not stop Jefferson from owning slaves and from being kind of a dick to his slaves as well. Now, of course, some accounts, even from some of his former enslaved people, refer to Jefferson as a fairly kind master, but it's an interesting moral question to ask if there is such a thing at all as a kind slave master. That's an interesting question, because the term itself is somewhat paradoxical, but we'll talk about that some other day. The point remains that Jefferson did indeed write quite a bit on the evils of slavery as something that is naturally abhorrent, as something that is an abomination, as something that the country will need to contend with at some point. And yet he still engaged in a very idiotic version of scientific racism, talking about the natural inferiority of black folks in his day, although he does say that they have a natural tendency to create beautiful art, but he doesn't really equate that to full humanity. He just says that that's a cool thing that they can do. He still engages with this idea that black people are inherently inferior to white people. And this all makes it worth asking, when he talks about slavery as an evil thing, as a naturally abhorrent thing, what exactly does he have a problem with? In a very moving passage from his notes on the state of Virginia, Jefferson says that he trembles in fear when he remembers that God is just. He trembles for his country, knowing that justice cannot sleep forever. And one day, when God chooses to enact justice on the United States, it's not going to be pretty. There's a little bit of debate on what's going on here, but it seems as though Jefferson is lamenting the fact that some of the slave owners in his day are doing something that he felt to be naturally abhorrent. They are not doing any work while their enslaved people do all the work in the field. He sees that as naturally problematic. He sees it as a type of injustice. And so the day that God shows up to right this wrong, to restore order and justice, it's going to be a calamity in the United States. If a revolution ever comes up, he had this pathological fear that the African Americans would, very rightfully so, rise up and start to destroy everything. And it's interesting because he sees this revolution of African Americans as God's judgment on the country, something that the country deserves, something that he is terrified about because he knows that it's potentially coming. This is probably one of the reasons why Jefferson believed that African Americans need to be removed from the country. He uses an analogy where he compares slavery to a wolf, and this wolf is being held by the ears by the United States. The US cannot simply just let this wolf go. It cannot just end slavery just like that, because the wolf might attack it. But it cannot continue in good conscience to hold on to this wolf. The US has to get rid of slavery, but it can't simply do it, because retaliation would be deadly. And so Jefferson proposed a type of gradual emancipation where the children of enslaved people would be taken out of the country somewhere in Africa or somewhere in Haiti. Because there's this pathological fear, a fear of revenge, a fear that Jefferson believed was justified, a fear that in some sense still exists today in the United States. This is a fear at the heart of the United States that African Americans have been in tune to for the longest time. It is the idea that something immoral, something fundamentally evil happened on this land, and if revenge were to emerge in response to this evil, it would be catastrophic, and on some level deep down the United States understands that this revenge would be deserved. This is a fear that MLK was very attuned to. In his book Stride Towards Freedom, towards the end, King says this: "Only through a nonviolent approach can the fears of the white community be mitigated. A guilt-ridden white minority lives in fear that if the black man should ever attain power, he would act without restraint or pity to revenge the injustices and brutality of the years. It is something like a parent who continually mistreats a son. One day that parent raises his hand to strike the son, only to discover that the son is now as tall as he is. The parent is suddenly afraid, fearful that the son will use his new physical power to repay his parent for all the blows of the past. The black man, once a helpless child, has now grown up politically, culturally, and economically. Many white men fear retaliation. The job of the black man is to show them that they have nothing to fear, that the black man understands and forgives and is ready to forget the past. He must convince the white man that all he seeks is justice for both himself and the white man. A mass movement exercising nonviolence is an object lesson in power under discipline, a demonstration to the white community that if such a movement attained a degree of strength, it would use its power creatively and not vengefully. Now, King has been critiqued a lot over the years for these sentiments, including from other civil rights leaders. Why focus so much on the fear of white America? What does it mean to forget the evils of the past? These are all interesting and reasonable questions. At the heart of it all, though, is this idea that there is a fundamental fear, a fundamental tension at the heart of this country. It's not surprising that so much history is being washed away in the country these days. It is to the state's benefit to forget certain things, to act as though this revenge is not warranted, to act as though there is not a fundamental violence at the heart of the country. It's always fascinating that some of this erasure comes out of conservative Christian circles, considering the fact that in the scriptures, the very first murder that is recorded between Cain and Abel ends with God telling to Cain, "I know you killed your brother. His blood cries out to me from the ground. The blood of the innocent cry out to God from the ground, and he hears them." It's an interesting, fascinating, striking, as Jefferson would say, trembling image. None of you asked, but those are some thoughts.
Some very interesting thoughts indeed, brothers and sisters. On the continent, in the diaspora, wherever you are, descendant of African peoples who have been through the transatlantic slave trade, colonial exploitation, it's ironic that the same ideas exist everywhere colonization is touched. In South Africa, in America, it's all the same. They who came way back when know exactly what they've done, and they've been in fear of it ever since. And they've been blaming us like somehow we're the ones who are in the wrong, being angry and seeking justice. They have a weird way of spinning it, and today they are hell bent on twisting things to make themselves feel like the victims. It's interesting to me when we keep trying to convince them what they've done. They know what they've done. They just hope to all of hope that they don't get punished for it. They don't want to get punished. Okay? They want to keep what they stole, all the land, all the riches, and God forbid you as a black person gain some power. You are supposed to consider them, their fears, their pain, their this, their that. Any black person who tells you to put their feelings ahead of your own is an agent of the enemy. Martin Luther King had made a lot of great speeches throughout his time. But in the end, was it truly worth it? Because the fact that so many of them will point to him and leaders like him, whether it's on the continent or in America, and say, look, you should be more like that black. No, family. But these are the things that we're living in. Right now, white South Africans are spinning tales of oppression. White Americans are spinning tales of oppression. 5 minutes in our shoes, already they're ready to cry. We owe it to our ancestors, past, present, and we owe it to our descendants to stand tall where we have been victimized. And it's not about maintaining a victim mentality. Without a doubt, we're shining, we're standing on our own 2 feet today. The question is, what do you as a black person on the continent or in the diaspora plan to do with that power. There is no rule that says you can't have both. Be creative, but also, I'll see you in the next one.